Welcome all to our UNESCO lecture series, The World in 2050. should rather say welcome back. It's already our 7th installment of this lecture series. We had very important topics, but today we have one crucial topic for humanity, really, which is the future of the oceans. And I'm so happy and honored to have Pierre, one of the utmost authorities on this topic in the world and certainly also in UNESCO community, that will tell us more about the future of our oceans, about the future of a very, very, very crucial part of the environment we are living in. Pierre Feiler is UNESCO Chair in Ocean Governance at the Center for Blue Governance at the University of Portsmouth in the United Kingdom. He's a professor of economics, interestingly, in the Faculty of Business and Law, and his particular area is the so-called blue economy, and that means the sustainable use of oceans and coastlines for economic growth while preserving the health of the ecosystems. And as you may understand already from the topic, this is a hugely complex, interrelated topic that Pierre addresses by the means of various research projects, multidisciplinary teams in Europe, Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and the Pacific region, and he collaborates with governments, national research institutions, and universities. So, dear Pierre, we are so happy to have you with this absolutely crucial topic that deserves an in-depth observation. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Roland. So I will give you not so much what or how the ocean will look like in 2050, but more on what should be done in order to have something that is still sustainable or sustainable in 2050. So the presentation is based on quite a lot of research and consultancy, and also advice given to many governments in Asia, in Africa, in Caribbean, and even in Europe, of course. So it's more like some lesson learned and some tips about what should be done, rather than making some forecast or projection for 2050. So just to start with, so here we are talking about the blue economy and the blue governance. And this is something interesting because it's a bit counterintuitive in the way that when the people are thinking about blue economy, they are thinking about big nations with big oceans or big economic exclusive zone. But in fact, the blue economy really emerged from the tiny nations, but with big water around. It's mainly the Pacific nations and also the Caribbean one that promote the blue economy, and mainly at during the 2014 Samoa conference. And we did for the UN at that time already a document on unlocking the full potential of the blue economy for the African seats, so small island and developing states. So when we did that, that was interesting because the blue economy was not at all in the agenda of even the UN. You can see on the left, okay, it really become on the UN after the 2017 conference in New York on the Ocean Conference. But up to then, it was really something that was in the air but not really implemented. And we had this 2018 conference in Kenya. That was for the preparation of the Portugal conference, the Lisbon conference. I think it was in 2020, if I remember, just at the COVID time. And that make a big push, you know, for the promotion of the blue economy. And following that, we did, I think we have the report, I don't know who is reading Arabic here, but I put that in Arabic. It's also in French, in Portuguese, and in English. And we did the African Union Blue Economy Strategy at the time. And that is the key document that is driving the development of the blue economy for Africa. In the meantime, and this is what you can see this on my right, we have a lot of derived products. We have the blue bonds that is quite fashionable at this time. Seychelles has did that, emitted some blue bond a few years ago in 2015. I don't know if you noticed, but Belize has done the same. It's a very complicated process at the moment, and the return on investment is not so good, but we can discuss that later. You have also another many other, like the bluebells, the blue gardens at the UK. The bluebells is really about the UK OTCs, so overseas territories, etc. So that's the situation we have. And what we did with UNECA, and I think UNECA is took the leadership on this, not only at the African level. So UNECA is the UN Economic Commission for Africa, but more at the very global level by developing some work on the blue economy, but also, and this is, I think you have the title here, a policy handbook, just to highlight. And I think Roland, you were mentioning the complexity, but this is, and you can see in the two figures, the complexity and the difficulty to implement the blue economy. And on our left, you can see that we have to move or to make links between the different levels, from the sustainability, the economics, to the environmental, to the social sustainability, and through all the different gradient or level of governance, from the international to the regional, to the national, to the local ones. So that's quite challenging, to go through this spectrum of governance and also to link the different dimensions of the sustainability and to find that at the end into the blue economy development. On the other figure, you can see that is even more complex, because you not only have to look at the different type of sustainability, but also the different components. So it goes from, you can see maybe on the orange, from the green port, to the fair trade on the green, to the blue carbon on the blue area. So how to combine all of this? This is really the key challenge of the blue economy. And this is what makes the blue economy quite unique, in the way that is not about developing one pillar of the blue economy or developing one sector, one economic sector. As you can see, you will see later, many government and many experts, even experts, are still relying on this definition of a very sectorial approach. Okay, but it's really about making the combinations and making the links between the different components of the economy, and more particularly the blue economy. So that's quite challenging, and it's even more challenging when you try to put that into practice, because the people are not ready, first to work at different levels of governance, and secondly, to integrate different levels, different components and different concepts as well. And this is something interesting in the way that when we think about the blue economy, we will tend to rely it only to the SDG 14, which is on the ocean, the life below water. But in fact, and this is why I put this table, which is extracted from the UNECA document, is that it is linked, the development of the blue economy or its implementation is linked to all SDG from the 1 up to the 17. So that's quite challenging. Of course, the 14 is important. Of course, the 13 for the low carbon transition is important, but it really targets or is really linked to every single SDG. The other thing to have in mind is that, and I think thanks to the African Union, is that the blue economy is not only about the ocean, it's also about the continental waters, all the lakes. Take, for instance, the Tanzania, where we are working at the moment. The fisheries is more important on the Lake Victoria than it is on the coast. Kenya is more or less the same situation, and Uganda, of course, because it is a landlocked country, it all depends on the Victoria Lake for the fisheries and the rivers as well. So we have this situation even in RDC, you know, with the Tanganyika, Malawi, etc. So this is why the African Union has really put within the definition of the blue economy everything that is inland waters, and that's something interesting. But the problem is that, for instance, when you are developing an European project, as we did, for instance, for West Africa recently, which is about a 60 million euros project to support the development of the blue economy in West Africa, it's only linked to the oceans, not at all with the inland waters. So you see that there's some ambiguity and some issues, you know, regarding the definition itself, you know, because the EU is looking at the oceans, while the African Union is looking at both the oceans and the continental waters. So that can create some frustration. The other one is, maybe you can go to the next one. This is something that we found out, and because I've been working in many countries to implement their blue economy strategy and developing the strategy itself. So here you have a figure that is coming from Bangladesh, if I remember well, and you see that the blue economy is really about promoting the different sectors. So you have the sea soil production, you have the maritime tourism, the maritime surveillance, the carbon sequestration, etc. But this is really about developing or promoting one sector plus another one plus another one. So this is a really standard approach, because we have, I'm pretty sure you know that for your country, but every country had or used to have this maritime economy development or policy or strategy. And when you look at this, you say, this is just the maritime economy strategy, it's nothing else. And it's true. And even if you look at the World Bank and you have the document here on the right, you will see that the approach is really a sectorial approach. So it's really about developing the fisheries, developing the transportation, developing the ports, developing the coastal tourism. But it's not about making linkages between these sectors and try to get a better value or better value additions from the links that we can make. And we will see later, you know, the type of link that we can make. And these type of links are really, can really make a big change. Otherwise, I mean, we have been invested, this is what I say all the time, we have been invested for 50 years, since the independence of most of the African country. So we have been invested in this country for 50 years for the promotion of the fisheries, and it's still more or less on the same level. Okay, so I don't want to say that it's a big waste of money, but it means that there's something that doesn't work very in a good way. So it's really time to move from the standard approach to something that will generate more environmental benefit and more social benefits. So this is why we set up this. Here you can see a set of strategy that we have developed recently. We are completing at the moment the one for the Asian countries, so 10 countries in the southeast of Asia, and we have the ministerial conference for the validation of the strategy in the beginning of July in Indonesia. We have completed as well recently the one for the SADC. SADC is a South African development community. I think you have about 15, I never remember the exact number, but I think it's 15 countries in the southern part of Africa. So that should be validated soon as well. And we are completing the one for Madagascar at the moment. We have done the one for Jamaica, it's not here. So we have done quite a lot, and we will start very soon the one for the East African community as well. Okay, so if you want to have a look, I think some of them are available on the the one on the IOC for the Indian Ocean Commission is available. I think IGAD is available online on their website. The one for the Bahamas as well. Otherwise, you can just ask me, and I can provide that to you. We can say the roots or the basis of each of this strategy is really about making the links that doesn't exist, or improving the links that are already existing. It's also based on some key principle, which is the circular economy is really is quite weak in terms of implementation in Africa. We are doing at the moment some work with the World Bank, with the what they call the IODIS project that is hosted by the Indian Ocean Commission. So we are doing some project on this, looking at the implementation status of the circular economy in 8 islands around Africa, plus 7 islands plus Maldives. And overall it's quite poor, except for maybe 1 or 2 countries. Mauritius is not too bad, Seychelles is okay. But the other countries, including Madagascar, Comoros, Sao Tome, and Guinea-Bissau is part there because of the Bijagos Islands. And Cabo Verde, it's overall quite weak in terms of implementation of the circular economy and understanding as well of the circular economy. So that's something already challenging. The good governance, that's okay. That's more or less understood by the governments and by everybody, thanks to the World Bank that is promoting that since 1992. And also this is something that is quite crucial for us, is the 2 later points, is the environmental and social sustainability. In the way that I was referring to the sectorial approach, the sectorial approach is really about making jobs and making money out of the use of the blue resources. So this is why it is very important to put the environment and the social first and the economic third, we can say. The other thing is really to empower, the voice, or to enhance the voice of the people that are usually left behind or that are not included in the decision-making process. So this is something that is crucial, and for the development of the blue economy policy, this is something very, very important. The other point is that what we realize is that, and this is pictures from Bangladesh, is that on the top, and from Senegal on the bottom, is that when for the blue economy, the people are really dreaming about the blue economy. So like in Bangladesh, so just to make a story short, Bangladesh won 2 claims for their waters, one against India, and another one that was in 2014, and another one in 2013 against Myanmar. So overall, they've been able to expand the EEZ. There was some dispute on the limits of the EEZ of this country, and they have been able to expand its EEZ by 30%. And their questions were, what do we do with this? So maybe we have some oil, maybe we have some gas, maybe we have some everything. More or less, they wanted to. They were dreaming about that, and they even got a loan from 240 million from the World Bank. And they wanted to purchase some large tuna vessels trying to catch tuna in the waters. But in the Bay of Bengal, the oxygen level is too low for the tuna to come. So there were no points. What I want to say here is really that before dreaming about expanding yourself or going, very offshore, you need to fix the current issue. And for instance, here in Bangladesh, and this is what you can see on the picture here, the trash fish was a big issue. I mean, it's a big issue everywhere in Thailand, in Cambodia, everywhere is a big issue. And it took us about 3 years to convince the government, even the Ministry of Fisheries, which is a bit surprising, but even the Ministry of Fisheries, to ban the trash fish and to find solutions for these people. And we have been able to persuade the ministry simply by making a very short calculation about how much is lost for Bangladesh by taking these fish when they are babies, instead of letting them growing and selling them for exports, because you have a lot of shrimps here and you have a lot of very valuable fish, like the Ilsa, for instance. So because of this, so now there's a ban on the trash fish, which is a very good measure. Okay, and that's also means that if you're able to address and to all the issues you have on the coast, it will be much more simple to address them, especially for the fishery when they are offshore. Okay, if you are not able to address on the coast when you can see everything, it's almost impossible, to think about addressing them offshore. So that's one example. The other one, and this is something from West Africa. I'm going to West Africa in 2 weeks' time. We are going with the migrant fishermen from Senegal to Guinea-Bissau, and we will do some filming and some video for a UNESCO exhibition that we will have in June 2024 in Paris. So I already invite you to join us in June 2024 at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. And the migratory is something very interesting because it's is developing significantly for many reasons. But the first one is that there is no fish to catch, for instance, in the Senegalese water. Same in Ghana, there is no fish to catch. So the Ghanaian boats, the Ghanaian and the Senegalese fishermen are going everywhere around. And you can find now some Senegalese fishermen down to Gabon, down to even the two Congo. So they are going very, very far. So there's no fish, but also there is the climate change effect that makes the migrations something like a necessity for these fishermen, if they want to survive. So that's one important thing. But the key point behind that is that at the regional level, nobody recognize these migratory fisheries. They are not recorded anywhere, even if it's about 25% of the total catch. And the total catch in West Africa in this area, it's about 3 million. So you can calculate, the amount of fish that is not recorded anywhere. Okay, so that's something challenging. The environmental protection, and that's something that you will find everywhere. And the people, the key things here is that the people will think about developing, promoting the economic activities. Like in Madagascar, for instance, we are trying to persuade the government to invest into the restoration. But in fact, I just got an email this morning about the investment plan. They want to invest in 3 ports. So you see the difference, okay, between what should be done and what is done, in fact, okay? But of course, it's more rewarded to invest for government and for a minister to invest in ports, okay, in hard infrastructure than to invest in restoration, ecosystem restorations. But you will see the benefits very soon of the ecosystem restoration. So what we have overall, I think we have a few things when we try to implement the blue economy. Is really the first one is the difficulty for the countries to plan ahead, to plan the activities. And you can see, I think here is a picture from Dhaka, if I remember, is Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. It can take you about 3 hours to do about 5 or 6 kilometers in the city. It's just a big nightmare. And on the top, you have the image, the ideal situation from the EU perspective, where there is no externalities between the activities, or there is no negative externalities between the different activities. And this is what the planning aims for, is really to limit as possible or to reduce to zero the externalities or the negative links between the different activities. That's something very important. But for the developing countries, what is even more important, and for the people that want to invest, is to secure the investment. So when you have a maritime planning in place, you know that, okay, and the investor know that if they invest here and they will build a very nice hotel on the beach, they will have nobody developing some aquaculture, for instance, or drilling oil just in front of the beach. Okay, so it's something that looks a bit ridiculous when we say that, but this is the reality. Okay, So we need to really to have this in mind. The coordination, this is even more difficult to implement because the prerogative of the ministries, and they don't want to share them. Okay, so they want to keep that for themselves. So the fisheries ministers want to keep the fisheries under his control, same for the tourism, same for every other sector. And it's really, really challenging to put them together on the table and try to define some common vision and some common set of actions in order to promote their activities, not only in a silo perspective, but really by combining things. And we will have some example later. So that's quite difficult, and this is where, and I give you the example for Seychelles, for instance. Seychelles, the blue economy sales was located in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, directly linked to the presidency, but because they made two mistakes. The first one is that they didn't bring on board all the stakeholders. So that was quite challenging. So they were identified more as a fishery and a little bit aquaculture, blue economy sales rather than a real blue sales. And the second one is that the people that were working there were mainly people from the fishery sector. Okay, so you can see that you have people working on one sector, and more or less they just talk to the people in their own sector. So when in late 2022, when there are some new presidential elections, the new president just say, what do we do with this? Because this is fishery people, and they only address fishery issues. So they move this blue cells or blue department back, to the fisheries ministry. So you see that just by not having been able to not being able to have all the stakeholders on board, and to have only people from one sector, or public sector, that's end up with quite a disaster. And now the blue economy department is not working properly at all, despite the fact, and 10 years ago, they were quite, we can say, in advance compared to all other countries. So that's something important, the coordination. The other one is the consideration of the ecosystem services. And I think just after that, I give you some example. The ecosystems are not taken into account. So it's only about taking as much as possible from the sea, from the oil. So now everybody is discovering or has discovered oil in his water. So Mozambique is drilling. Senegal will start drilling with Mauritania very soon. Between Ivory Coast and Ghana is the same. So many places, oil is becoming, the main things. The climate change as well. So there's a lot to. Climate change is really impacting, the fisheries at the moment, but is also impacting many other things, including the reef, like in the Indian Ocean. With the sea temperature that is rising, that's bleaching the reef. When the reef are dying, they don't protect the coast. Same with the mangroves. So there's a lot of issue with the lack of protection, etc. I think for the moment we can forget the Blue Economy Development Bank. And this is, and I think that's where you can see, it's not in 2050, but that will be in 2063. These are some forecasts that we made for the African Union. And you see what is interesting here is that when you have in mind, the blue economy, you will think about the fishery. Oh yes, fishery is very important. On the top, you have the value addition created, and in the bottom, you have the number of jobs in the different sectors. And when you look at this, you say, oh yeah, fishery is important, but for the jobs, but not so much for the value addition compared to the coastal tourism. And this is quite surprising because the coastal tourism was something that nobody thought about in Africa. And you see that in 2063, by the way, why 2063 it is because it matched the African Union 2063 agenda. Okay, So we did that on purpose, and 2030 because it matched the SDG, the end of the SDG. So that's interesting to see that in 2030 or 63, you know, the tourism sector will be the one that will provide the most of the jobs in the blue economy sector. It's also the one that is the less protected from the social point of view. So this is why we are working currently with the ILO, the International Labour Organization, and the BIT, you know, the Bureau International for le Travail, to set up some standards. And we are starting now in Zanzibar some survey to develop the some social indicators for having some really good standards for the tourism, but also for the other sector. So look at this and you say, okay, we have to invest in the coastal tourism because this is the one that is providing very high value addition and a very big number of jobs. But in fact, when you look at a bit more deeper on the coastal tourism, you will see that the value addition that is created is not really profiting or benefiting the states. I mean, this is because it's foreign investment and the money is going out of the country. The jobs as well, they are really poorly paid. And when you compare, for instance, the fishery and the tourism in terms of jobs and value additions, I think you create for 1 million of or even 1 billion of value addition created, you have 3 times more jobs in the fishery sector than in the coastal tourism. So it means that, okay, maybe it's good to go for coastal tourism, but the fishery is still very important because it provides a lot of jobs and it provides stability along the coast. So something interesting. The other thing that is interesting is the blue carbon on the ecosystems that you can see, you know, their value is going up significantly or will go up significantly over the time. Even there is almost no jobs at the moment. So if you think about doing some nice jobs, so this is something where you can investigate, that's another thing that we are working at the moment with the UNECA is to, and we have some online teaching material, is about the blue accounting and the valuation toolkits. And my colleagues are currently in Nairobi providing some sessions for the IGAD countries, 8 countries in the Horn of Africa. That's one of the key challenges about how to record the progress of this. Okay, how to measure first the baseline, how to have a baseline, and to measure the progress from the economics, the environment, and the social point of view every year. Okay, so that's quite challenging. So that's why we developed a toolkit for that. The other thing that we talk about this, okay, and this is why this is quite interesting because this is one of the link between the environment, the service they can provide, and the money the countries can make. Here you can look what is in red. You can see that the mangrove, the seagrasses, more or less their ecological status or their health is about 44–45%. So more or less at that stage, they don't provide all the services that we can expect for a very pristine mangrove or very nice seabeds. So that's when you look at this, you say, there's a lot of things to do. But for instance, in Madagascar is even worse than that. Okay, so the situation is really, really bad. Not only because they are cutting the mangrove or they are doing stuff on the seagrass, but also because of the deforestation. So all the soil is going into the river, and the river, you know, is giving or putting onto the reef, to the mangrove, to the seabed, seagrass bed, all the sediments that are not appreciated too much by this ecosystem. So we are ending up with a situation where it's not very nice. And when we translate this into fish for instance, we made some estimation that more or less if we are able to restore the mangrove, the seagrass bed, and the reef, I think it was by 2050. Yeah, that's the report that we did for the African Development Bank. It will add about 10 million tons of fish, of biomass of fish that is catchable by fishermen. And that's what is interesting is that this 10 million tons of fish is more or less what is caught today's or this year in the African water. So you see that by restoring, you increase significantly the fish available for the artisanal, or of course for the industrial, but mainly for the artisanal fisheries in Africa. So this is where the links are important, about the links between the environment and the fisheries, for instance, and we can make the same link with the tourism and the environment, etc., etc. This is what is quite interesting at the moment is about the biodiversity and the climate change. And what is interesting behind that is that climate change is taking the lead. I mean, in the discussion, in the agenda, the political agenda, the biodiversity is the missing elements, or is the missing child here at the moment. Okay, nobody talk about biodiversity. Everybody is talking about blue carbon and how to mitigate the effects of the climate change and how to improve the capacity of the countries to absorb and to store the carbon. And here you have some idea about the tidal marshes, the peatlands, etc. And this is some work that we are doing in West Africa. We are expanding this at the scale of Africa. Is about looking at how the marine protected area are important for this, not only for the conservation of the biodiversity and for the protection of the fish, but also for the achievement of the country regarding the Paris Agreement. And what we found that is quite interesting is that some countries like Guinea-Bissau, especially with all the mangroves, I don't know if you've been to Guinea-Bissau, but it's really a country of mangrove, river and mangrove. Because of thanks to the mangrove, just the MPAs within Guinea-Bissau and the one on the from Cacheu and the one on the Bijagos are able to provide about 3 times, okay, more than 200%, 3 times what Guinea-Bissau said that they will achieve by 2025. So that's interesting. For the other countries, a bit less, but when we compare the surface, the MPA surface to the whole surface of the coast, this is quite interesting, in fact. And it clearly shows that if you protect your ecosystem, that will be, you will get some reward in terms of carbon sequestration and in terms of contribution to the NDC, which is the National Determined Contribution. But on the other side, what is also interesting is that this is what I was mentioning, is that the money at the moment goes to the climate change. To give you an example, the EU, the support, external support of the EU to about 100 countries, the climate change used to be about 30% of the money. So more or less 30% of the money was dedicated to climate change action. Now, within this new framework is 50%. It means that 50%, half of the action should go toward the climate change mitigation and adaptation. That's a big sense. And surprisingly, there is no target or there is no percentage that should be allocated to the biodiversity. So you see that the shift, okay, is that really we are really at a stage where it's not anymore about the biodiversity, it's really about the climate change. But that can be interesting in the way that we can use this, okay, to get the money and to do to improve the biodiversity. For instance, with the coastal restorations, here, for instance, I'm in an annual meeting of my EU funding project on nature-based solutions for the sea, and this is very interesting because we really can use the pretext of the climate change to improve the biodiversity, and this is something interesting, okay, because it didn't work before. to work on biodiversity for biodiversity didn't work at all, except in some area and very specific area. But now I think we have a new change to improve that really by restoring the ecosystem for climate change, but also for biodiversity. So I think we have some good things. So overall, and that's the last one, it's really about the transformation. And this is, I think, something interesting, because we have been doing the maritime economy, the blue economy, but it's still more or less the same. Okay, and there is not so many big change. So if you want to achieve something tangible and something sustainable by 2050, is really about transforming the way we are not only doing the things, but the way we are thinking and the way we are understanding the use of the oceans, and that really need a transformative blue governance approach. So it's really about to be awareness on the importance of ocean and water, which is not very deep at the moment. The coordination and the planning that we talk about, the potentials. So if the people, when we talk about potential, the people more or less think about, oh, what is about the capacity of the fisheries, you know, what is about the oil, what is about the oil reserves, but it's really here about what can we do, okay, on the top of what is already done. And I have a very good example, which is the algae production. That is the biggest or the faster growing sector in the world at the moment. Okay, so seaweed is the one that's where a lot of companies are investing, and is the one that can make change for many reasons. The first one is that it can be used for human feeding. Okay? The second one for animal feeding, and also it can be used to increase the biodiversity. So, and at the moment we are developing some projects about having some offshore MPAs, so marine protected area, with some offshore algae or seaweed farming to combine it. Okay. So why seaweed? To give you an example, in New Zealand, the dairy product company, the largest one, is investing in aquaculture for seaweeds. Why? Simply because they realize that by giving 20% of the diet of the cow every day with seaweeds, they were reducing the methane emissions of the cow by 60%, and they didn't need to use antibiotics anymore. So you see the dramatic change just by incorporating or making the links between the aquaculture, the seaweeds, and the production of milk. You can improve significantly both, you know, the health of your cow, but also improve the reduction of the methane emission. And methane is about 6 times CO2 in the accounting of the emissions. So you see that you have a lot of potential for medical, a lot of potential for the food. So this is the future, but to do that, you need to invest significantly and to develop some strong partnerships with some United States, European, or Japanese, or even Chinese companies. So that's the things. The potential is not only about what is available in the sea, is really about what can we do, okay, about developing them. Capacity building, so that's always a key issue. The accounting, so we mentioned the accounting. The blue financing, so we did quite a lot of work over the last 3 years in the Caribbean with the UN, UNDP, UNEP, and FAO. And we end up with a very, we can say, not so good conclusion, in the way that up to now the blue financing is quite limited and is only using the traditional channels. So there is no, that's why I was mentioning the blue bank in a few slides before. So that's to say that at the moment there is not so many new things in this area, and of course, you know, the maritime sovereignty that the African nations, especially Senegals, are promoting quite a lot and investing quite a lot to really ensure the sovereignty. So overall, if you put all of this together, it's really the indication that we need some really strong good governance in order to be able to achieve all of this. I think that's the last one. So thank you very much. I don't know if I've been too long.
No, you certainly haven't, Pierre. Thank you so much. I think what we take away immediately is the outstanding importance of this innovative field of blue governance that many of us still haven't acknowledged fully. And I think you gave us an excellent insight that this will be really a topic of the future, that this is a field that we really have to take seriously, not only from the side of international institutions, but also from the global community, because as you showed us perfectly, how we treat the oceans is really affecting all of us, even those people who are not directly living on the coastlines or connected with the oceans. And I think the second thing that I personally take away is that it is really about complexity thinking, about system thinkings, and about inter and transdisciplinary cross-border connections between developmental strands and strategies, which is obviously the most difficult thing to do at the moment. What came to my mind, Pierre, was immediately that we have new geopolitical tensions, not only about land masses, but also about the oceans. Think about the South China Sea, where China is building artificial islands. Well, there are huge tensions. Think about West African waters. You mentioned it. There are new pirate fleets, so to say, not only attacking trade, but also plundering the coastlines of several countries that are too poor to defend themselves. So what worries me a bit is, can we break through, Pierre, in your opinion, to some kind of improvement of international governance in that field? Are there approaches? I mean, the OECD, for example, together with UNESCO, has recently launched the new approach of anticipatory innovation governance, AIG. Are these perhaps approaches that could help to transform and develop a further participatory blue governance? Where do you see some chances, some concrete approaches of improvement for the coming years? And the second question from my side would be, do you see any options that technological progress, perhaps in the rather direct and primitive sense, could affect the field? In the meat industry, which is really harming the environment, we now have a huge new topic, which is artificial meat. So basically, we create meat from living cells and organs in laboratories without sacrificing the animals. Could this be something for the future of fishery? Do you think this could relieve the sector a bit? Or is this pure speculation in your view? These would be my two questions. And I invite all in the audience, please ask your questions to Pierre. We have one of the really, if not the leading experts and also thought leader and activist in the field with us today. And I'm so happy about it. Please use the chance. If you want to go into the field, ask a question, use the chat function to do so, and do so fast, because we are already closing in to the end of our presentation. So please, Pierre, what about my two questions to start with?
Yeah, I think the first question about the concrete action, I think this is exactly what we started to do with UNECA, the African Union, and the African Development Bank. about developing this blue economy valuation toolkit, because it's, I think he reached two objectives. The first one is, as I mentioned, to have a baseline and to be able to record, the progress. But the other one is really about improving the understanding of the blue economy from the people at all levels, so from the civil servants, from different levels, in the way that they understand that the blue economy is not about only economics. That's the key thing. Okay, is that when I show the example, when you improve the situation of the mangrove and the seagrasses, you improve the situation of the fisheries, and that's something that takes time. And in a more concrete action, we have developed for the World Bank, for the GEF, the Global Environmental Fund, a project like this for the Gulf of Guinea, linking the fishermen with the people working in the conservation, okay, through what we call a payment for ecosystem services. And that was interesting because the fishermen didn't have a clue about, or they didn't think about, the relationship between the health of the mangroves and the size of the fish or the abundance of the fish. So this is the type of things that should be promoted, like linkages. This is the things that should be put up front in order that the people start thinking a bit outside of their sector or outside of a very silo approaches. So that's what we are trying to promote. But for this also, we need some people with a very open mind and people that got a good educational background or good things. And me, I've been very lucky because I did my study, I did a master degree in Canada about 30 years ago, something like this. Okay, but it was, I learned biology, fish biology, law of the sea, port development, transportation, shipping, etc., fish, aquaculture, whatever you want, and that gave me, the possibility to understand and to take into account what the different people are saying around the table and the different sectorial perspective. And I think this is one of the key things that is missing at the moment, is that we have people working in the blue economy are mainly people from the fishery sector. And they have a lot of difficulties, to think about the other sector and to include that into their thinking. So that's the thing. And of course, the innovation is something. I was mentioning that to the blue for the biotechnology. We can talk about that for the blue energy. There's so much to do. Everything has to be done. So that's really something that we can think about. Yes. For the second one, I think the artificial meat is interesting, and if you are able to listen to French, we did very recently with one of our research program in West Africa that is looking at the relationship between the climate change, the small pelagic fisheries, and the food security in Africa. So there is like a video done by the French journal Le Monde showing this relationship and the effect of the fish meal industry. Okay, so the fish meal is about feeding the salmon. For instance, when you are eating salmon, more or less you are, for 1 kilogram of salmon is about 7 kilograms of small pelagics. Okay, so that's quite important. And 7 kilograms of fish meal is about 50 kilograms of small pelagics alive. So to make it short, you need about 50 kilograms of small pelagics to get 1 kilogram of salmon. So you see, but now we are replacing, and I think the industry is quite innovative. They are replacing the fish meal by some powder made from the black black soldier. So it's a very tiny insect that is. And this is one of the biggest growing sector in Europe at the moment. Everybody is going, for black soldiers, and the production is going like this, and that will replace very soon, or is already replacing the fish meal. So in other words, we can continue to produce salmon, but with a combination of this black soldier powder, algae is entering more and more massively into the diet of the, not only for chicken, but also fish. So there's a lot of things that are moving at the moment. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that can help the further sustainability of the fisheries. But there's still a lot to do. Yeah.
But you're in principle, you seem to be both realistic, but also to some extent optimistic, if I understand you well.
Yeah.
And I think this is the right mindset, because so many people tell us that the world comes to an end, and I don't think that this is helping that much.
No, it doesn't help. No, that's true. Now we are working so much, you know, and on the restoration, that's we see, you know, the effect of the restoration and the immediate effect. Okay, so that's quite is really surprising. I always give an example where I go swimming in the Caribbean, in Martinique, you know, because my wife lives in Martinique. So every day we go swimming at 5 p.m. 15 years ago, the beach was not there was nobody on the beach except a few swimmers like me. They did two things. The first one is that they banned the beach sand from the fishermen. That's why, you know, dredging the bottom of the sea, and they put some sewage system in place, so some good water treatment system in place. In about 2-3 years, the algae came back. So the seaweeds came, and with the seaweeds, you have the turtle that came, the fish, the lobsters, and now you not only have the swimmers, but you also have many families on the beach. So just by restoring this, you have some direct positive economic effects and social effect, because the people can enjoy to be on the beach. So that's one key lesson, I think, and I learned about that.
So thank you,
Yeah.
Pierre, that we finish on a positive note.
Yes, yes.
Which I think is especially important also for a younger audience, which wants to co-create a better world, and certainly the oceans will remain crucial for this, as we said. Thank you so much, Pierre. And I think you touched upon one thing in your whole presentation. We need a different mindset. We need a new mindset to deal with these huge challenges of humanity. And so invite our audience, please be back, stay with us also for the next lecture. The next lecture will address the possibility of responsible futures. So can we change our mindset to the better at all? And how can we do so? And this will be delivered by one of the legends of the UNESCO Chair community, Ted Fuller, also located in the United Kingdom at the University of Lincoln. So please be back on the 30th of May at 1 o'clock as always. Thank you for your participation. Thank you really a lot, dear Pierre, and I hope we continue this discussion as it is so important. Thank you all, and see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye, Pierre.